Dust settles on leather sandals as a Jewish tentmaker walks through the marketplace of the ancient world's most intellectual city. He uses the Greek word Theos. It is the standard, universally accepted word for God that will eventually be written thousands of times. They respected the academic prestige of Athens. They wanted Christianity to sound smart to the intellectuals. So they tried to merge the two. They tried to keep the biblical story but attach the Greek apatheia. They decided God could love us. But he could not actually feel love. They decided God could forgive us. But he could not actually feel compassion. Because if he felt, he would react. If he reacted, he would change. And if he changed, the philosophers would mock them. They built a hybrid deity, half Abraham, half Aristotle, a God who saves your soul but remains completely emotionally detached from your life. Look at how you handle your own failures right now. You hide, you perform. You try to earn your way back into the room. You assume God is mildly irritated. You assume his arms are crossed. You assume his face is blank. This is the apatheia heresy living in your own bones. You have internalized the unmoved mover. You believe in a God who demands flawless performance because he himself is static. This is not theological maturity. It is a tragedy. The God of the Bible is not immune to your pain. He is deeply, consistently, fiercely moved by it. Look at the pages of the prophets. God describes himself as a husband betrayed by a wandering wife. He describes himself as a mother comforting a nursing child. Most people assume this was a seamless translation. We assume that when the Greeks said Theos, and when the Hebrew prophets said Yahweh, he describes himself as a father watching a rebellious son walk down a dusty road. These are not the images of a stone statue. These are the images of a beating heart. If your God cannot weep over a burning city, you have the wrong God. If your God cannot feel the sharp sting of betrayal, you have the wrong God. If your God cannot be moved by the sound of a human cry in the dark, you are worshiping a marble column. The true God is not an unfeeling equation. He is a relentlessly pursuing presence. And the absolute proof of this emotional vulnerability arrives on a dirt road in Judea. The sun beats down on the limestone caves outside Bethany. A heavy stone sits against the mouth of a tomb. Inside, a body has been wrapped in tight linen strips and covered in spices for 4 days. The heavy scent of myrrh mixes with the sharp smell of decay seeping through the cracks in the rock. A crowd of mourners wails in the midday heat. Mary falls at the feet of a rabbi from Nazareth, her face streaked with dirt and tears. The philosophers in Athens would know exactly what a true Theos should do in this moment. They were pointing at the exact same concept of a supreme being. And it does look that way on the surface. A perfect Theos would offer a stoic lecture on the immortality of the soul. A perfect Theos would stand tall, completely undisturbed by the temporary sorrow of mortals. A perfect Theos would never, under any circumstances, cry. But Jesus looks at the tomb. He looks at the weeping sister in the dirt. He hears the wailing echoing off the canyon walls. And he does something that completely shatters the Greek definition of the divine. He groans in his spirit. He breaks down. He weeps. The Greek word used here by John is not a quiet, dignified shedding of a single tear. It is a violent, shuddering sob. His chest heaves. His breath catches. The unmoved mover shakes with grief. The untouched intellect tastes the salt of his own tears. He does not weep because he is helpless. He knows exactly what he is about to do. He is seconds away from calling a dead man out of the dark. He weeps because the pain of his friends physically, visibly moves him. This is not a lapse in divine perfection. It is the absolute destruction of apathy. This is the scandal of the incarnation. The Greeks built a theology around a God who stays clean. They worshipped distance. But the God of the Hebrew scriptures refuses to stay clean. He reaches out and touches lepers whose skin is turning white and numb. He lets a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. But if you look closer at what the Greeks actually demanded from their deities, and at what the Jewish scriptures actually reveal, grab the dusty fringe of his woolen cloak, He allows his own creation to strip him naked, press long thorns into his scalp, and drive cold iron spikes through his wrists. A god of apatheia cannot bleed. A god of apatheia cannot have his breathing cut off by the rough wood of a Roman cross. A god of apatheia cannot scream into a darkened sky, asking why he has been forsaken. This is not a god who observes the human condition from a balcony in the clouds. This is a god who plunges his own hands directly into the open wound of the world. The cross is the ultimate offense to the Greek mind. The Apostle Paul himself admits that the cross is foolishness to the Greeks, because to the philosophers, suffering is the definitive proof of a flawed, weak deity. But to the writers of the New Testament, suffering is the proof of a completely different kind of perfection. It is the proof of a Hebrew word the Greeks did not even have in their vocabulary, a word that explains why he was willing to bleed in the first place. The Hebrew language does not have a word for a detached, geometric deity. When the writers of the Old Testament needed to describe the absolute core of God's character, they did not look for a philosophical term that meant untouchable perfection. The Greek Theos and the Hebrew God are not the same being. They are barely even the same category. They reached for a word forged in the dust of a wilderness tent, writing it down more than 250 times across the heavy parchment of the ancient scrolls. The word is the Hebrew hesed. It is notoriously impossible to translate into English with a single stroke. Our modern Bibles try their best, rendering it as loving kindness or mercy or steadfast love. But those words inevitably sound like gentle, passive feelings. Hesed is not a passive feeling. It is a fierce, unbreakable, covenantal loyalty. Think of Moses in Exodus chapter 34. He is standing high on the jagged granite of Mount Sinai, shivering in the cold cleft of a rock, while the literal glory of God passes by. God is declaring his own name to a man hiding in the dark. He does not announce himself as the unmoved mover, nor does he declare his absolute immunity to human suffering. He announces that he is a God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in hesed. To the Greek philosophers pacing the polished marble floors of their academies, love was a profound vulnerability. If you love someone deeply, they possess the power to hurt you. They possess the power to disappoint you. They can alter your state of being, bringing you joy or crushing you with grief. Therefore, to the Greek mind, a perfect God cannot possibly love. This is not an academic debate for theologians sitting in a seminary library. It is a diagnosis of the modern heart. Love requires a tether. And a tether means you are no longer completely self-sufficient. But the Hebrew text flips this logic upside down. The prophets understood that a love that refuses to engage with human mess is not perfection at all. It is simply cowardice dressed up as philosophy. Hesed is the absolute willingness to be wounded by the object of your affection, and to keep pursuing them anyway. It is not an emotional reaction to good behavior. It is a stubborn grip that refuses to let go. This is the fundamental collision between Athens and Jerusalem. The Greek Theos stays clean by staying far away, preserving its perfection in a vacuum. The Hebrew Yahweh gets his hands dirty, preserving his covenant by stepping directly into the chaos of a broken people. One is a concept you study, while the other is a person who bleeds for you. But if the ancient scriptures are so breathtakingly clear about this fiercely pursuing God, how did the modern church lose him? How did we end up assuming God is standing light years away, with a disappointed look on his face? A scribe sits in a freezing monastery cell. The stone walls are thick. A single oil lamp burns. Because the truth is, most of us carry a Greek God in our heads while trying to have a Hebrew relationship in our hearts, filling the small room with the smell of scorched clay and soot. He dips a reed pen into dark ink. He translates the Hebrew prophets into the language of the Roman Empire. But he reads the text through Greek eyes. He scrubs out the tears. He sanitizes the grief. He builds a wall around the divine. And centuries later, that wall was passed down to you. You wake up in the dark. Your chest feels tight. The guilt hits you before your feet even touch the floor. You know exactly what you did wrong. You broke the promise again. You lost your temper again. You fell back into the exact same habit you swore you had conquered. You imagine God looking at you. You picture a blank stare. You picture crossed arms. You picture a slow, disappointed shake of the head. You sit in the silence, feeling completely isolated. You assume God is tired of you. You assume your repetitive failures have finally exhausted his patience. Because a Greek god calculates risk. A Greek god has limits. A Greek god cuts his losses when a human becomes too messy. You project the unmoved mover onto the Hebrew father. You think you are experiencing a spiritual crisis. You are actually experiencing a historical mistranslation. The distance you feel is not a theological reality. It is a philosophical ghost. Look at how you react. You try to earn your way back. You pray harder. You promise to do better tomorrow. We have inherited a definition of the divine that was forged by Aristotle, not Abraham. We expect a God who is a distant. You try to clean up your own mess before you approach the throne. You are trying to impress an Aristotelian concept. You are trying to appease a marble statue. But Yahweh is not Aristotle's God. He does not retreat when you fail. He steps forward. The mess does not repel him. It draws him. The Greek Theos demands that you elevate your mind to reach his untouchable perfection. The God of the Bible lowers himself into the dirt to reach your broken reality. Your failure is not an offense to his perfection. It is the canvas for his hesed. When you sit in the dark, overwhelmed by your own inadequacy, you are not sitting before a cosmic judge with a clipboard. You are sitting before the God who wept outside a tomb. You are sitting before the God who let his own heart be pierced by a Roman spear, just to prove that he refuses to remain safe. He is not immune to you. He is tethered to you. But if you finally strip away the Greek assumptions, if you finally shatter the marble statue, the entire biblical story suddenly changes shape. Everything you thought you knew about the text looks completely different when you see it without the apathy. A tent maker stood in a forest of marble statues and introduced a father who refuses to be left alone. Unfeeling force of geometric perfection. And when we encounter the messy, grieving, fiercely pursuing God of the text, we do not know. The unmoved mover put on human skin and pitched his tent in the dirt of a broken world. A flawless intellect heard the wailing of a grieving sister and shattered his own perfection with a violent sob. A supreme deity let a bleeding woman touch his dusty cloak and traded absolute immunity for human healing. The creator of the universe was dragged up a limestone hill and let cold iron pin him to the wood. A self-contained force screamed into a darkened sky and tasted the bitter salt of his own tears. A God of unbreakable covenant watched his people wander away and stepped directly into the mess to drag them home. Not an equation, not a statue, a beating heart. But maybe the part that stays with me most is that violent, shuddering sob outside the limestone cave in Bethany. Jesus knew exactly what he was about to do. He knew the heavy stone was going to be rolled back. He knew a dead man was going to walk out into the midday heat wrapped in grave clothes. If there was ever a moment to remain stoic, to display perfect Greek apatheia, it was right then. But he didn't. What to do with him? The God of the Bible is not a philosophical concept to be debated. He is a wounded lover. He let the temporary, messy, terrifying human pain of his friends physically move him. He let his chest heave. If you are in a season where you feel completely disqualified, where you are sitting in the dark, assuming God is looking down at you with his arms crossed and his face blank, it is time to smash the marble statue. You are not trying to appease Aristotle's formula. The God of the Bible is not standing light years away, waiting for you to perform before he approaches. He is deeply, consistently, fiercely moved by your reality. He does not cut his losses. And may the God who has never once been immune to your suffering walk into the middle of your darkest room and show you a love that refuses to stay clean. If this shattered a ghost for you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who grew up terrified of a distant, disappointed God. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. The year is roughly 51 AD. The sun beats down on the white stone of the Areopagus. Athens is a forest of marble. Who stepped into the dirt? The question is how we mix them up. And the answer changes how you read every prayer you have ever prayed. To feel the weight of this collision, you cannot start with Paul in the first century. You have to go backward. You have to step out of the sun and into the shadow of the Parthenon, hundreds of years before the New Testament. Thus written, where a philosopher is about to define the strict, unbreakable rules for what God is allowed to be. The greatest minds of the ancient world had a logic problem. They looked up at the night sky. They mapped the perfect, silent orbits of the stars. They drew triangles in the sand. They discovered the flawless laws of geometry. They concluded that whatever engineered this universe must be absolutely, mathematically perfect. But perfection is a trap. Aristotle, writing on heavy parchment scrolls centuries before Christ, built a logical cage for the divine. He looked at the chaos of human emotion. He saw kings weeping over dead sons. He saw soldiers shaking with fear. He saw lovers burning with jealousy. Emotion is messy. Emotion is reaction. Therefore, a perfect being cannot emote. Every street corner, every plaza, every public building is crowded with statues. Gods of war with carved spears. Gods of harvest holding stone wheat. If a being is perfect, it cannot change. Because if it changes, it either becomes better or worse. If it becomes better, it was flawed before. If it becomes worse, it is flawed now. So, God must be static, frozen like a statue in an empty courtyard. If a being is perfect, it cannot have desires. To desire something means you lack it. To lack something means you are empty. So, God must be completely self-contained. Aristotle called this the unmoved mover, a force that spins the galaxies but never leaves its throne, a pure intellect that contemplates only its own brilliance. Because to think about anything lesser, like a human being, would contaminate its perfection. This is the Theos of the philosophers. This is the God of the Academy. It has no heartbeat. It sheds no tears. It breathes no sighs. The unmoved mover is not a father. It is a formula. It is a mathematical equation carved in cold, white marble. Imagine bringing a broken life to this God. It cannot pity you. Pity requires an emotional shift. Imagine rebelling against this God. It cannot be angry with you. Anger is a reaction to an outside force. And nothing outside the unmoved mover can affect it. Gods of the sea clutching tridents. You can smell the heavy, metallic scent of blood and frankincense wafting from 100 different altars. If you cry out in the dark, the sound hits a wall of pure, undisturbed silence. The Greeks worshipped a deity that was immune to humanity. They built an entire theology around distance. To them, the highest possible form of existence was untouchable, unfeeling isolation. But a few hundred miles to the east, across the saltwater of the Mediterranean, a completely different reality was being copied onto rough animal skins. A text about a God who smells the thick smoke of burning cities. A God who hears the groaning of slaves packing wet mud into bricks. A God who expresses jealousy, who feels betrayal, who rips the heavens open to step down into the dust. The Greek Theos is allergic to dirt. The Hebrew God plants a garden in it. When Paul stands up to speak in Athens, he knows exactly what he is doing. He is about to take their perfect, unfeeling word and infect it with blood. The wind coming off the Aegean Sea sweeps across the limestone of the Areopagus. Paul stands in the center of the intellectual universe. Around him, men in heavy folds of woolen tunics, the Epicureans who believe the gods do not care, and the Stoics, who believe the universe is ruled by cold, unfeeling logic. Wait for him to speak. They love new ideas. They collect them like copper coins. A man stands completely surrounded by the intellectual elite of the Roman Empire, the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers. He points to a specific block of carved stone he passed on his way up the hill, the altar to the unknown God. He does not start by quoting the Torah. He does not pull out a scroll of Isaiah. He starts exactly where they are, standing in the shadow of their own philosophical architecture. What you worship in ignorance, Paul says, his voice carrying over the wind, this I proclaim to you. And then he begins to dismantle their entire cosmological framework. He tells them that the God who made the world and everything in it does not live in shrines built by human hands. This is a direct strike at the Parthenon, looming just above them on the Acropolis, a massive structure of gold and ivory meant to house a deity. He tells them that this God is not served by human hands, as if he needed anything, because he himself gives everyone life and breath. This sounds, for a fleeting moment, like their unmoved mover. It sounds like the self-contained, perfect being Aristotle described. The philosophers nod. They are tracking with him. But then Paul takes a sharp, violent turn. He tells them that this God actually desires humanity to seek him, that he determined the exact times and places where nations would live, hoping they would reach out in the dark and find him. They do not have Bibles. They do not know Moses. They do not care about a covenant made in a dusty wilderness. The Epicureans cross their arms. The Stoics narrow their eyes. The unmoved mover does not hope. The unmoved mover does not desire to be found by tradesmen and slaves. Paul is taking the Greek category of Theos and pouring a radically different substance into it. He is introducing them to a God who breaches the distance. This God is not an equation to be solved. He is a Father who refuses to be left alone. The philosophers listen quietly. The tension in the air is thick. They can tolerate a new theory of divine mechanics. They can debate the nature of existence all afternoon. But then Paul utters a phrase that shatters the Greek worldview into 1,000 pieces. He does not just say, God is close. He says God has appointed a day to judge the world by a man he has appointed. And the proof of this is that he raised this man from the dead. At the mention of a corpse coming back to life, the crowd erupts. To the Greek mind, the physical body is a prison. Death is the glorious release of the soul into pure spirit. The idea that the supreme Theos would resurrect a physical body made of meat and bone and blood is not just ridiculous, it is repulsive. They mock him. They wave him off. They walk away. They missed. They care about logic. They care about perfection. You can hear the hum of the marketplace below, the clinking of copper coins, the collision. But the collision was just the beginning. Because if you want to understand the true depth of the gap between the Greek mind and the Hebrew text, you cannot just look at the speeches. You have to look at the exact words chosen to record the New Testament, and the breathtaking sabotage hiding inside the vocabulary. The greatest hijacking in literary history happens on a blank sheet of parchment. The Apostle John sits down with a reed pen. He is writing to a Greco-Roman world that is absolutely saturated with the logic of the philosophers. He knows the vocabulary they use. He knows the definitions they demand. And in the very first sentence of his gospel, he borrows their ultimate word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The word John uses here for God is the Greek Theos. He uses their word. He speaks their language. He sets the trap. Because John knows exactly what his audience hears when they read Theos. To the Greek mind, a true Theos must possess one specific, non-negotiable attribute. It is the defining characteristic of their divinity. The Greek word is apatheia. It literally translates to without passion or without suffering. It is the root of our English word apathy. The debates echoing off the painted colonnades, Paul looks at this sea of carved deities, stopping at a monument etched with a strange dedication. Today, we consider apathy a character flaw. We think of it as a failure to care. But to the philosophers of the ancient world, apatheia was the highest possible virtue. It was the summit of perfection. To have apatheia means you are completely immune to outside influence. You cannot be acted upon. You cannot be moved to tears by a funeral. You cannot be moved to joy by a wedding. You cannot be disappointed. Because disappointment requires vulnerability. You are a fortress of pure, undisturbed, unfeeling logic. A perfect Theos requires absolute apatheia. If realizing how much Greek philosophy has secretly colored our modern view of God is stirring something inside you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So, John takes their pristine, untouchable word and drops it straight into the dirt. He uses Theos in verse 1, and just 13 verses later, he writes the sentence that tears the Greek universe apart. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The Greek verb is skenu. It means to pitch a tent. The unmoved mover puts on human skin. The untouchable intellect pitches a tent in the mud of a broken world. To the unknown God, he is about to do something completely reckless. He is going to borrow their vocabulary to tear down their worldview. The perfect abstraction learns how to bleed. This changes everything about how we read the New Testament. John is not just telling a story about a baby born in Bethlehem. He is executing a calculated, lethal strike against the religion of apatheia. God is not an abstraction hovering above the pain of the world. He is a participant who steps directly into it. He does not possess apatheia. He possesses its exact opposite. But to see how dangerous that opposite truly is, you have to look at the heresy the early church accidentally caught like a virus. You sit in a quiet room. You fold your hands together. You close your eyes. You pray for a breakthrough. You pray for healing. You pray for a fractured marriage or a wandering child. And you wait. The room is completely silent. The air feels heavy. Your jaw is tight. In that stretching silence, a specific image of God creeps into your mind. You picture a judge holding a clipboard. You imagine a disappointed teacher. You envision a distant manager who is simply too busy keeping planets in orbit to care about your specific, suffocating grief. You think you are being reverent. You are actually being Greek. The early church caught a virus. They lived in a Roman world. They read the Greek philosophers,